This is Unforgettable Learning, where we talk to L&D visionaries, experts, and mavericks about performance, creativity, and tech. Subscribe to stay in touch.
Well, this is genuinely a question that we've been thinking about a lot recently, is that as work evolves and it's accelerating the need for adaptable employees, connected and empowered by sort of Ask Me Anything style AI layers, potentially making just knowledge and information really easily accessible to everybody. Many learning leaders are really wondering, what is the role of us in the future? And we've been thinking about, how can people with their knowledge of growth, i.e. learning leaders, and their expertise in learning experience and skills development aid the really rapidly changing place of work itself, and L&D, of course. And I know that you're asking these questions. Serena, we're lucky to have you here with us. And I'd love for you to share your outlook in the second part of our conversation on organisational learning. So can we delve into this question of the future? Perhaps starting by just clarifying, what is the role, as you see it, of L&D? You've interviewed 68 CHROs, CLOs, CEOs in this area, so you've got a really great perspective on this. What would you say they think their role is today, and where do you think we're going? And I'm so excited to find out whether you've got some kind of really cosmic, dreamy view of this, or whether it's kind of practical, and I guess that's probably what we also need to hear, but go as wild as you like.
So breaking that down into a couple of things. First, the automation, and there will be more jobs taken over by technology and dare I say AI, because that's become the buzzword, will impact how we work, just as the internet did some time ago, and the reason why we still don't use the abacus. Technology will constantly evolve, and the world of work will continuously evolve. Fundamentally speaking, if a machine can do something better than you, it really should. But let's put in place all the governance. I mean, you ask any CEO today and they'll tell you, yes, we want to capitalize on AI. No, we don't want to risk data privacy or compliance or fall foul of any regulators. So those will balance themselves out. Task will emerge that is far better done by AI than the humans do. And so rather than thinking, let's not have it, reframe the question to, what is the role of the human in an organization of tomorrow? And it's not a new conversation. About 5 years ago, the World Economic Forum put out the top 20 essential skills for humans in the workplace. And they were all human skills. They were empathy, they were innovation, they were thinking and problem solving, they were being able to interpret an issue and explain it to people. Yes, there was digital literacy, but it wasn't the number one. And I don't believe that those will change. I believe that why we hire people will be reframed in the organization of tomorrow. I also said most of my research is in startups, scale-ups, hypergrowth, and tech firms, digitally transforming firms. And what I've already noticed there is that in smaller organizations, as you're building, you're growing, there's no time for deadwood, and there's no money for deadwood. So there is nobody needed, one person, who's going to direct you and put you onto training programs. That is deadwood, especially if in some cases your LMX or your LXP or whatever we call it tomorrow, does it just as well. So I believe that there doesn't need to be a standalone, historically structured learning function in most firms of tomorrow. I think they'll be called learning and talent, it would be called talent development, or if it's called learning and development, it would focus on the development part and less on the learning, which has now been equated with content generation. So I think that the role of the people who look after people will become more holistic in the future. Because that's where there'll be, it won't be on how technology is replacing me. It will be on how it's partnering with me. And then I have to learn or be taught how to partner back and carve out my own niche while I'm doing it.
I can see Josh bursting to say something.
You know me, Kate, it's mostly a joke than anything else. I'm going to be advocating now for reframing the title of that department to development and other stuff. Let's just take all the learning. Let's just take the learning out right altogether and just go the Department of Development and Development, or Development and other stuff. You bring up a really interesting point, and I think this is tied to something else that you've mentioned before of it, and this it almost sounds like it's stating the obvious, but it's kind of putting the human at the center of what development is in an organizational context. And everything you're talking about is sort of, and I read the same report too about just in all the existential dread that is coming for AI, the lamp of hope in knowing that the future is actually as human as ever, and the demand for what it is and looking for. How do you pair something like facilitating working with technology, enabling people to improve their relationship with technology, with also something like psychological safety, which I know is of particular importance to you, knowing that especially in these times, as we're kind of making this big, bold transition to working with technology, working with AI, what's going to happen to my job? Is my job at risk? Is half my job going to be gone? How do you see the relationship between those two things working together?
It's a good question, Josh, and it's really hard because over time we've always had to deal with technology taking over jobs, right? We've got nobody's sitting with hand looms spinning as much anymore for us. We've always had to deal with technology taking over jobs. And the conversation always has been, so what happens to the human? And somehow, organically, something has always happened with the humans. They've found their way to doing other things, and they found their way to align with whatever the new normal is. I'm not entirely. It's very hard to visualize how this looks then in an organization, whether the sizes of the firm will change or whether we just have stuff which happens which doesn't need a human and stuff which happens which needs a human. I'm not entirely sure. I do believe that as people who look after people, either their learning needs or their functional employment needs or their from payroll to performance needs, I do believe that how we do this and what we will have to do will have to pivot, taking into account their new reality. But I'm not entirely sure how we'll do this. I figure, like everything else in L&D, we'll sort of stumble along and then hit upon it. I'm being a little bit facetious, but I do think that every single time there's been a new change, everyone goes, whoa, whether it's something small like putting in small, I say small, but something as singular as putting in place an ERP system to how Y2K freaked out the world. Every time there's something unknown coming, everybody goes that either I'm going to jump on this bandwagon or I'm going to live in absolute fear of it. When probably the answer is there's nobody holding anything to our heads. Things will evolve as they are. I just went off on a tangent. I'm sorry.
No, it's great. No, you didn't. We're all just like gripped, really, because it's been the conversation that we've been having with everybody bar one on every episode. So how one of the things that struck me when we were recently kind of at Learning Technologies, or when this goes out, we won't have been, but speaking to people recently, what occurred to me is that also in L&D, we've been incredibly adaptable. For the last 20 years, we've gone from kind of face-to-face training to trainers wondering what will happen with e-learning. Imagine e-learning being a frightening concept for taking a job, and interesting that you say that, learning has become equated with content creation. What a shame. That's such a mental blocker that we've got that now. And, even e-learning has become a problematic concept because we want to say, if digitally enabled performance support or tools or resources, I take quite a broad view on it. It's whatever's the best thing to get the job done. But we've adapted. We've always found a way in our industry. And so, I feel somewhat optimistic myself about where things will go and how we'll adapt and actually thrive in new environments. It will just look a bit different. And it takes, I think, people with a sort of healthy amount of ability to not panic. Definitely don't panic, first of all, but also to see where the opportunities can be. And to your point, experiment with things, try things and have, watch what happens and explore it with a degree of optimism.
I did explore a scenario where I asked people, if you remove the entire L&D function from a firm, would anyone notice?
Josh's favourite question. What did they say?
So you get, the stages of grief.
Yeah. But who would be shocked? Who would be shocked? Only the people in L&D.
Like from the shock that of course they'll notice. What do you mean that things you
need to acknowledge something has died before you can even grieve on it, so
that's where the stages. So you start with shock and disbelief, and then you move on to quiet contemplation, and then you move on to and then by the time the realization hits at the end of it. But it's something to go again. Everybody is constantly learning. They learn it in a positive way or they learn it in a negative way. But everyone, we get through life by learning how to put one foot in front of the other constantly. Everyone is doing so in their job, and they're doing so in everyday life as well. So if all we are the custodians of some content that people may or may not use to learn, then one, do they need so many of us? And then two, do they need us at all? So if you're not, as a learning person, tying yourself in, again, to business contexts, so yes, to putting the individual at the center, but more importantly, putting the business at the center. Because if it wasn't for a business, you wouldn't have a job. There's a reason I teach people Kubernetes and not salsa, because they need this to do their job, which will make them successful in their business. That might give them might wind up with happy employees, but it doesn't contribute in any way. By the way, I have no idea what Kubernetes is.
What is it? I was going to ask you.
It's something to Google to do with containers. That's about all I know.
They do it with what? They do it with what? Sorry.
Hey, containers? Like, oh my God, now you're making me explain.
We have to know. We're going to look it up. How do you even spell this?
Kubernetes. It's a Google thing. It's a
Kubernetes. I don't even know how to spell it.
I've never even heard this term.
Versus Docker? No.
Aubernet.
Okay, it's an open source container orchestration system for automating software deployment, scaling, and management.
Jesus, Serena, what a reference.
Look at us. What did you say?
My head.
You said we're all learning all the time. This is like a drop the mic moment. Stop and figure this out.
As well, which is another actual sentence I use on why our role isn't what it used to be, right? There are people in organizations working on technologies far beyond our average human's understanding, from AI to robotics and machine learning, the fintech going on, the biotech. The world is working on technology far beyond the understanding of those who are not experts. And then I saunter in with my D's and whatever and go, this is how you're going to learn it. How ridiculous, how incredibly stupid we sound when we say that.
Well, it's almost the biggest statement of it that what I heard you talk about, Serena, that really resonates with me is coming back, filing it into the most obvious things that actually, when reframed in the right way, make a hell of a lot of sense. Is learning is always happening, and learning will always continue to happen because that's what it is to be human. But the biggest test of the proposition is that learning isn't happening where you might think it's happening. And it's certainly not happening how you think it is happening either. And that's almost the threat and the opportunity of where our field is that those that embrace the fluidity, the rate of change that happens with it, to understand that, well, actually, there will always be a role for learning in an organization, but not in the what and the how that you think it is happening. Those that are resistant to that are going to find they're going to struggle big time with it, but those that embrace it a bit more with more fluidity and an open mind are going to succeed in it. Because, yeah, it's easy to kind of take a myopic view of it and say, oh no, death of L&D. Well, no, actually, learning is always going to happen. We just need to reframe to, well, that can happen outside the realm of content and formal training, and it can exist in the realm of in the flow of work. Huge fan of 5 Moments of Need as an example of that, to say, where is learning happening? How is it happening? And how can we best facilitate that?
Yeah. That summarizes everything I was going to say. Thanks, Josh. That is it. That's exactly right. Learning is constantly happening. If learning professionals want to play a role in that future growth of the workforce and the organization, they have to reframe what they bring to this fictitious table that they so desperately want to get on. That's the starting point for us. If you want to play a role in employee and organization and business success, what is your role and in the part you play in all of this?
Serena, one of the things I just love about this conversation is that we've talked about, without really using the words, sort of analytics and impact. You've almost just like swept that aside as a sort of method that goes, of course we're going straight to the end. Of course we need to know where we're trying to end up, what impact we're going to make, where we're going to influence this business. And I think for lots of people listening to this, they'll be thinking, how refreshing. I was getting kind of caught up in the metrics of how I connect things together, and maybe we were wondering how we might do it. But maybe if I give myself the permission to let go of some of these sort of things that I've been really overthinking, perhaps, all with good intention, and really just focus on what is it in the end that we're trying to change. If I can even find a way of articulating that, I'm 90% of the way there. After that, the method is whatever we want it to be.
And that's where the power of analytics and AI will be. Not in Gen AI is great, but what I am looking for is that predictive learning element. What I'm looking for is where we can look at the business strategy. We can look at the countries and that they look to grow in. We can look at the specific technologies that they're looking to either implement or sell. That they're looking at the market, that they're looking at their workforce, and then predicting that in order for us to do that, this is the development that we should be offering people along the way. These are the frameworks that we should be creating. That's when AI will start getting supremely exciting, and it will get there. That's where the sort of analytics that I'm interested in, on how we could be looking forward to build now. And then we've looked, our analysis of the end state is so secure that people don't ask us to justify what we've built on the way, because it's self-evident and explanatory, because it will be then looking at the next step forward. That's the bit that where we've not even scratched the surface. And I find that hugely exciting, to put some predictability to the most unpredictable thing in the world, which is the human, and then figure out how they can contribute in a particular way to a group or a team and organization success. I think that's the exciting stuff that I would love to be playing a role in the future as a head of L&D.
That sounds like absolutely rich ground, and probably one for another podcast. We're almost out of time, though, in this one. I want to check in with Josh. Do you want to ask anything else while we're here on this, or reflect on anything else before I ask our final question?
No, other than Serena will be in your inbox to schedule the next episode in minutes.
Totally agree. All right. Well, Serena, we ask everybody this, and this is our final question for you. And I hope, and I'm sure that you're going to have something interesting to say. What does unforgettable learning mean to you?
I think that's a really good question. And I think this sounds silly, but I think unforgettable learning is learning that you don't even remember you going through a process of doing. I don't actually remember learning to walk. I sort of tried it and I failed and I tried again to use. And is your little one walking yet, John?
No, but I'll need a step by step for how we go through this, because I'm terrified.
But they are wonderful, right? Aren't they wonderful? They're just learning stuff every day, and they don't remember. When I think about why I am doing something, yes, I have read a little bit and I've seen what somebody else is doing. I think unforgettable learning is learning that is not confined to a single event. When you have done so much in a space that it's become organic to how you function, it's become ingrained, so much so that you probably remember how it all started, but you don't remember. Learning happens when you reflect on what you consume, not when you're consuming. And then it's the reflection and the trying and the experimentation and the redoing it before it becomes a part and parcel of you. And then suddenly you realize you can do something, but you can't remember how or the specific what's. So I think that's what unforgettable learning is: the combination of learning experiences and experiential learning, such that it's not confined to one thing, because one thing is always forgettable.
Amazing. You must be the first person who said that unforgettable learning is actually forgettable. I love it.
I was just about to talk about the grand irony in your definition, and it's incredibly romantic, if I can use that word, because it resonates so deeply with all of us, right?
It's a delicious oxymoron, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Serena, we can't thank you enough for your time, and more than anything for just giving us soundbite after soundbite, and you filled my diary with just all sort of Serena-isms that I can't wait to scratch even more with it. Thank you for your time, and really looking forward to your debut album, Smiley Sheets and Bums on Seats. We're looking forward. If we can be a feature, let us know, because it's going to be a banger.
Oh, thank you for having me. Gosh, I've loved your journey so far. So I'm very, very honored that you all have invited me here. And I'm always happy for a chat. I always set out when I did the doctorate to say this would be free for everybody, and as many platforms I can have to put it out there, I welcome. And this was so much fun. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you too, and we'll speak to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode. Subscribe to stay up to date with leading lights from L&D, and leave us a review to let us know what you think.